Midnight in suburban Australia. Quiet streets. Driveways lined with vehicles worth more than most annual salaries. And somewhere in the dark, a group of men who know exactly which car to take, how to take it, and how to make it disappear without a trace. In late 2025, police noticed a pattern they couldn't ignore. High-end four-wheel drives, Toyota Land Cruisers and Prados were vanishing without noise or damage. No smashed windows, no alarms, no mistakes. In Brisbane alone, dozens were stolen in a matter of weeks, pointing not to opportunistic thieves but to something far more organised. What investigators eventually uncovered was not a local crime spree, but an international car theft syndicate. Foreign operatives, high-tech methods, and a global export pipeline stretching beyond Australia's borders. The operation triggered one of the most complex vehicle theft investigations the country had seen in years. So, who were these men? How did they pull it off? And how close did they come to getting away with millions? Subscribe to the channel and let's begin. Night after night, Brisbane residents woke to the same shock. Between October 20th and December 1st, 2025, roughly 60 Toyota Land Cruisers, Prados and similar high-end SUVs disappeared across the city. The thefts were clean. No broken windows, no forced ignitions. Some vehicles, each worth more than $120,000, vanished without leaving so much as a scratch behind. As reports stacked up, the numbers turned ugly fast. Police later estimated the total loss at $8 to $9 million. At first, officers treated the cases as unrelated. A stolen car here, another there. But the pace told a different story. Dozens taken in just 6 weeks isn't coincidence, it's planning. CCTV footage showed the same calm movements. Tow yard records hinted at staging locations. Shipping data began to surface where it shouldn't have. Then came the break. Detectives traced several stolen vehicles to a wrecking yard in Rocklea. From there, the trail jumped to sealed shipping containers at the Port of Brisbane and then to Melbourne. Inside one container, officers found a Land Cruiser hidden behind stacks of strip panels and loose parts disguised as scrap freight. It was theft wrapped in paperwork. 15 vehicles were recovered in those searches. The rest were already gone. As warrants were executed, another detail emerged. Thieves had been using advanced electronic bypass tools capable of defeating immobilizers and GPS tracking systems. Some cars were taken in minutes. No noise, no chase. What looked like a local crime wave was something else entirely. They didn't look like criminals. They looked like renters. Short-term leases, clean paperwork, quiet neighbours on Brisbane's south side who kept to themselves. No parties, no noise, no attention. And that was the point. By early January 2026, police had arrested 7 men, aged between 28 and 45, believed to be at the centre of the entire operation. Public reporting described the group as multinational with links to Brazil, Fiji, Japan and Afghanistan. Investigators say this was not a loose crew. It was the whole machine. Together they were charged with more than 300 offences, with some reports putting the number closer to 380, tied to an estimated $8 to $9 million vehicle theft spree. This wasn't a street gang, it was closer to a logistics company. According to police, each man had a role. 2 were linked to a Rocklea wrecking yard, where stolen vehicles could be hidden, stripped, or disguised as scrap. Others focused on surveillance, walking suburbs at night, mapping routines, identifying high-value cars. Some handled the technical side using electronic bypass devices to defeat immobilizers and GPS systems in minutes. Others booked containers, managed freight schedules, and prepared export paperwork designed to look routine. When police searched properties, they didn't find flashy wealth. They found tools, burner phones, short-term rental contracts, handwritten ledgers, electronic devices built for one job only. Everything was disposable, everything replaceable. The structure was deliberate. If one part failed, the rest could keep moving. It took weeks of quiet work to pull the picture together. CCTV footage showed the same figures returning to the same streets. Tow yard records lined up with theft dates. Shipping manifests traced containers from Brisbane to Melbourne, then offshore. In one case, a stolen Land Cruiser was found sealed inside a container, hidden behind disassembled parts like a bad joke played on customs. Several of the accused were refused bail and faced appearances throughout in January 2026 in Brisbane Magistrates Court. Prosecutors pointed to the organised international nature of the crimes. If convicted, some face long prison terms. For the suburbs left behind, the realisation was chilling. The people next door weren't just stealing cars, they were exporting lives, one driveway at a time, and no one knew how many shipments had already slipped away. This wasn't messy crime. It was quiet, fast, and deliberate. The kind of theft that leaves nothing broken and no one alerted until morning. As the Brisbane spree grew, police realised they weren't chasing amateurs. They were dealing with technicians. The break-in rarely started at a door. Instead, thieves drilled a small, precise hole near a tail light or rear panel, just enough to reach the wiring inside. From there, they tapped into the CAN bus, the digital system that lets every part of a modern car talk to the others. Think of it as the vehicle's nervous system. Once inside, they injected false commands. The immobilizer shut down, doors unlocked. Factory alarms stayed silent. In some cases, built-in tracking was disabled before the engine even turned over. The whole process could take 2 to 3 minutes. The tools told the story. Police seized CAN bus injectors, laptops, plug-in interfaces, and probes designed to send fake signals without cutting wires. No stolen keys, no broken glass, just electronics doing the dirty work. Vehicles were then driven away calmly or loaded onto trucks, disappearing without noise or drama. Investigators began spotting patterns, the same tiny drill marks, the same clipped connectors, the same software interference logged inside vehicle systems. That digital fingerprint linked thefts across multiple suburbs. It also pointed detectives toward the next stage, concealment. Some stolen cars were moved to a Rocklea wrecking yard where they were hidden, stripped, or prepared for shipping. When police later forced open containers, they found Land Cruisers concealed behind stacks of disassembled parts, made to look like scrap. 15 vehicles were recovered this way, just a fraction of the total taken. The final step was export. Containers were booked on normal schedules. Paperwork looked routine. Freight companies moved sealed boxes with no reason to suspect what was inside. Once a vehicle crossed the port gate, recovery became unlikely. What made the operation so effective was discipline. Burner phones rotated daily. Short-term rentals used for scouting. Tight timing to avoid patrols. No noise, no rush. This wasn't chance. It was a system. And for weeks it turned quiet Australian streets into a conveyor belt feeding a global black market, one stolen car at a time. The case cracked open on December 2nd, 2025, inside a silent yard in Rocklea. When detectives cut the seal on a shipping container, they weren't expecting theatre. What they found instead was precision. 2 Toyota Land Cruisers, intact and ready to drive, were buried behind a wall of disassembled panels and bumpers. Dust from freight coated the metal, but nothing was stripped. These weren't cars being broken down. They were being packed up. That moment changed everything. This wasn't local theft for quick cash. It was export. In the days that followed, police widened the net. More containers were seized at the port of Brisbane. Then, working with Australian Border Force, 4 more were intercepted in Melbourne. Inside them, the same trick appeared again and again. Whole vehicles hidden among scrap, sealed and documented as routine freight. In total, 15 stolen cars were recovered. The rest, around 40 vehicles, were already gone. Investigators believe those shipments were bound for the United Arab Emirates, where Australian four-wheel drives carry a premium. Do the math and the picture turns bleak. Roughly 60 vehicles stolen in 6 weeks. Less than a quarter recovered. An estimated loss of $8 to $9 million. The hiding method wasn't clever. It was boring. And that's why it worked. Panels stacked to look like wreckage. Paperwork that matched normal exports. Container seals replaced cleanly. Freight companies moved the boxes as they always had, with no reason to stop. Until police traced VINs, manifests, and booking histories, everything looked legitimate. This was logistics crime, not street crime. Scheduled sailings, reserved container slots, a steady pace that matched commercial shipping, not panic. Once a vehicle passed through port gates and onto international cargo, the odds of recovery collapsed. From there, the trail ran through customs offices, foreign ports, and international requests that take months, sometimes years. For the owners, the moment was brutal. Watching police pry open containers on cold concrete floors, they saw the truth laid bare. Their cars, family vehicles, workhorses, savings on wheels, had been reduced to export stock, not hidden, not rushed, just quietly shipped away like washers or spare parts. That Rocklea container was the pivot point, the exact place where quiet suburban streets connected to global trade lanes, where a local crime revealed itself as something far bigger and far harder to stop. By mid-November 2025, police knew this wasn't a random crime wave. The thefts were too clean, too fast, too consistent. On November 17th, Brisbane detectives made the call. This was organised crime. A dedicated task force was formed, Operation X-Ray Locks. From the start, it wasn't just local police. Federal agents, border force and interstate vehicle crime squads were pulled in. The response was quiet, deliberate and wide-reaching. Investigators worked day and night, stitching together fragments most people never notice. CCTV clips. Digital fingerprints left inside stolen vehicles where security systems had been tampered with. Each piece alone meant little. Together, they formed a map. The turning point came on December 2nd, 2025. Detectives raided a wrecking yard in Rocklea and cracked open a shipping container. Inside were 2 stolen Land Cruisers, hidden behind stacks of vehicle parts. That container changed the case. This wasn't just theft, it was export. Within days, more containers were seized at the port of Brisbane than in Melbourne, as authorities raced to stop shipments already in motion. Search warrants uncovered the tools of the trade: burner phones, short-term lease paperwork, CAN bus electronic devices capable of disabling vehicles in minutes, laptops, handwritten ledgers and falsified shipping documents. Everything pointed to planning, not panic. In early January 2026, police moved in. 7 men aged between 28 and 45 were arrested. Together they were charged with more than 300 offences, with some facing up to 60 counts each. Magistrates repeatedly refused bail, citing the scale and international reach of the alleged operation. For victims, the arrests brought mixed emotions. Relief that the syndicate was stopped. Fear that many cars, around 45, were already gone for good. The sting ended the spree, but it also exposed a hard truth. A patient, professional operation had turned ordinary suburbs into part of a global supply chain, and it nearly got away with it. What unsettled investigators most wasn't just how big this syndicate was, it was how familiar it felt. Australia has been here before. In the early 2000s, vehicle theft exploded nationwide, peaking at more than 370,000 stolen cars a year. Then came immobilizers, alarms, and tracking tech. By 2020, theft numbers had dropped to under 200,000 annually. It looked like progress. But cases like this exposed a harder truth. Organised crime didn't disappear. It learned. Today's target isn't random cars, it's high-value, four-wheel drives. Toyota Land Cruisers and Prados have become rolling currency. Tough, reliable, in huge demand overseas. In parts of the Middle East and Africa, a single Australian-sourced Land Cruiser can sell for far more than its local value, especially once identifying numbers are altered or removed. That profit gap keeps pulling syndicates back to Australian suburbs. This wasn't new. In 2016, police shut down an international ring exporting stolen vehicles to Africa, hidden in containers labelled as household goods. In 2021, New South Wales investigators uncovered a network linked to outlaw motorcycle gangs moving stolen cars interstate and rebirthing them with new identities. The Brisbane operation followed the same logic, but with sharper edges. Fewer people, more tech, faster export timelines. Ports are the weak spot. Australia moves over 11 million shipping containers every year. Only a small percentage are physically inspected. Criminals know the math, lose a few shipments, land one, and the profit still stacks up. One successful container can erase dozens of failed attempts. What made this case different was the structure. The accused weren't tied to one gang or background, it was transactional. Temporary alliances built around money, then quietly dissolved. The tools weren't patches or muscle. They were spreadsheets, booking numbers, and shipping schedules. For police, the lesson was blunt. Organised vehicle theft is no longer a local crime. It's a global business. And for ordinary people, that means a quiet street at midnight can be the first link in a supply chain that ends half a world away. The arrests didn't end the story, they moved it into a colder place. In early January 2026, 7 men were marched into custody and remanded, facing a staggering wall of charges, more than 300 offences between them. Some accused of up to 60 counts of stealing, others of repeated attempted thefts, tied to a single, coordinated operation. Bail was argued, then refused, again and again. Magistrates pointed to the scale, the planning, and the international reach of the alleged crimes. This wasn't joyriding, it was organised export theft. Court dates stacked up fast. Hearings scheduled across January, more to come. And legal experts warned the case would stretch on for months, possibly years. For victims, justice came mixed with frustration. Police had recovered 15 vehicles pulled from wrecking yards and sealed containers. Some were worth more than $120,000 each, but around 40 cars were still gone, believed to be overseas, sold or stripped beyond reach. For many owners, that meant insurance battles, excess payments, delays, replacement vehicles that didn't match what was taken. Several victims said the loss felt personal. These weren't just cars, they were family vehicles, work tools, long-term investments, and they were treated like cargo. Behind the scenes, police froze assets and seized the tools of the trade. Burner phones, CA bus hacking devices, fake shipping paperwork, handwritten ledgers. Federal agencies and international partners were pulled in to track containers that had already left Australian ports. Requests were prepared to chase vehicles across borders, but success was far from guaranteed. Prosecutors now face a complex puzzle. Digital forensics, shipping records, CCTV, rental histories, each charge must be proven, link by link, no shortcuts. Investigators estimate the total theft at $8 to $9 million. Car makers began reviewing security gaps. Insurers warned of rising premiums in high-risk areas. Lawyers prepared restitution claims that could take years to resolve. Under Queensland law, aggravated vehicle theft can carry penalties of up to 14 years in prison. But sentences come later. Proof comes first. The arrests sent a message. These crimes aren't invisible and they aren't untouchable. But for many victims, one question still hangs in the air. How much was already gone for good? And will justice ever feel like enough? When a crime grows this large, the damage doesn't stop with the people who lost their cars. It spreads quietly into streets, systems, and trust. In just 6 weeks, around 60 high-end Toyotas vanished from Brisbane suburbs. Only 15 came back. The rest left behind more than an $8 to $9 million financial loss. They left a question mark over how safe really is. People noticed the change almost immediately. Driveways felt exposed. New SUVs no longer felt secure just because they were locked. Owners doubled back to check keys. Lights stayed on longer. Neighbours started watching the street instead of sleeping through the night. This wasn't panic. It was adjustment. Insurance companies felt it too. Dozens of claims hit at once. Some owners waited months for replacements. Excess payments stacked up. Insurers warned that when theft spikes hit specific areas, premiums often rise in those postcodes. The cost doesn't stay with the criminal. It trickles down, household by household. Manufacturers were forced into the spotlight. Toyota Australia publicly confirmed it was working with police, responding to concerns that modern vehicles had been defeated using electronic CAN bus attacks. Immobilizers, once seen as a final line of defense, were no longer enough. Security had become a software problem, not just a lock and key one. Then there's the ports. Australia moves millions of shipping containers every year. Major hubs like the Port of Melbourne alone handle millions of TEUs annually. Only a fraction can ever be physically checked. That reality gives organised crime room to breathe. One container that slips through can wipe out weeks of police work. Legally, consequences exist, but they move slowly. In Queensland, serious vehicle theft can carry penalties of up to 14 years in prison, but cases involving export, false documents, and international buyers take time. Evidence must cross borders. Assets must be traced. Recovery can take years, if it happens at all. What lingers most is the fear. Communities adapt. Steering locks return. Alarms are upgraded. Trust erodes quietly. The thefts stopped. The syndicate was hit. But the real cost is harder to count because once confidence is stolen, it's the last thing to come back. What this case ultimately exposes is not just a single syndicate, but a system under pressure. In barely 6 weeks, an international network turned ordinary Australian streets into a supply chain, exploited modern vehicle technology, and moved millions of dollars worth of cars toward overseas markets. Arrests were made, containers were seized, but many vehicles were never recovered, and the methods used will not disappear with this group alone. Who should bear the burden of prevention? Manufacturers, ports, or policing? And what would you do differently to protect your vehicle? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story valuable, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.